Alright, what is up YouTube? Welcome back to another anime live action video for you guys. So this one actually comes from an idea that was mentioned in the podcast episode. My podcast called Ryuk's Apple, be sure to check that out. Link is always in the description down below. But yeah, me and Superfeels actually did an episode where we talked about the Death Note live action Netflix adaptation. And in that episode, he mentioned something that kind of stood out to me. He said, well, you know, Death Note has a lot of monologues and Light talking to himself inside his head, right? And they can't really show that in live action, so they had to think of something else to do, you know, some other way to portray, you know, his vision, what he wants to do, what he needs to do, right? And, you know, that kind of stuck with me, right? Because I'm thinking about it like, well, could they not really show like monologues and stuff like that? Like now, typically, you know, as someone who has went to film school, you kind of learn all about script writing. You start to learn that the audience really can't read the main character's thoughts. They can't read their minds. That's why, like, a lot of the times what the main character does is, you know, externalized and you know, it's driving the story and it's what we're following, right? So you know how the saying goes, actions speak louder than words, and for the most part when it comes to script writing and storytelling, that is true. As an audience, we're drawn to action a lot more than we are to, you know, inner monologues and like people talking to themselves. And that's why, to me personally, I think it's really cool that, you know, Death Note can work as an anime where, you know, there's not a whole lot of quote-unquote action, right? It's just a lot of people talking and a lot of words being uttered, but like really it's just still so exciting and so awesome. It was really great and unique for me to experience as one of my first animes diving in. But yeah, the question is, could these inner monologues, could all this talk inside Light's head really not work in live action? And then that got me thinking, well, you know, I did recently just rewatch a show that has a lot of those inner monologues and plays on a lot of that inner thinking and talking inside someone's head and stuff like that. And I think the show does it really, really, really well. And that show is known as Dexter. Now, not to get confused with Dexter's Laboratory, but you know, the horror crime show Dexter, right? It's a pretty popular show, so I'd be surprised if you guys haven't heard of it, especially considering, you know, it's a crime series and has a lot of similar elements to Death Note when they get into the crime NCIS aspect, right? So there's definitely already a few similarities within Dexter and Death Note. But I think one similarity that kind of just goes unread or unspoken is the inner monologues. In a lot of scenes, in a lot of episodes, pretty much in every episode, really, Dexter will have these inner thoughts, right? And he doesn't say them, he doesn't speak them, but there's a monologue voice in his head that says it. It's got a little effect to kind of let you know, like, okay, it's in his mind, it's in his head. But I feel like the show does it so often that we kind of start to expect it after a while, after getting to know the character, getting to know Dexter. And a lot of the times when I watch Dexter, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I watch it for. It's kind of been incorporated into the core style of Dexter, and I find it actually pretty entertaining. A lot of the times, you know, Dexter is kind of this character who's like pretending to be normal, but in reality, and you know, in his mind, in the inside, he's really just like a serial killer, basically. It's kind of cool to see all the thoughts that he thinks in his head when he actually interacts with people, because they're completely opposite sometimes of like what he's actually doing, and it's really, really funny. I think a lot of times they do it really well. They either make it super funny or they make it, you know, really knowledgeable and very informative for us to learn more about Dexter's character. Why don't they try to do something like that with Death Note if they're gonna make Death Note a live action? They never even tried to do anything like that with the Netflix adaptation, right? But to be honest, I think it could definitely work. And I think that, you know, one of the coolest things about Death Note, style-wise and aesthetic-wise for me, was seeing like the inner thoughts whenever Light or another character would have this like inner monologue moment. Basically all the colors on the screen would be black and white and have this like kind of flashy, blurry, you know, sun flare effect to it, except for the character's eyes and hair. And Light's was red, L's was blue, you know, and then eventually later down the road, they had other characters from the investigation team and they had different colors. I thought that was so cool and one of the coolest effects that Death Note had done, and I thought it was super original too. And I feel like, honestly, to this day, it's still really cool. And, you know, it's kind of interesting, right? Because I feel like that's definitely something I would love to see in live action. Style-wise, I feel like it's kind of iconic to Death Note, which is always something really cool to see. whenever there's, you know, fan art or artwork of Death Note, it's always really cool to see like Light and L. But you know, then they just have like the blue and red for like their eyes and their hair. I think that that's so cool, and I think that that's something that would be really interesting to see in live action. At least style-wise, but that's just the style of that. At the very least, the monologues, even if they didn't go for the whole like colored hair and everything else has no color or whatever, I still think that would be a really dope idea, really sick, and definitely visually interesting to see in live action. There's definitely a lot they could do to like play around with that and, you know, make it more modernized or whatever. But even if they didn't do the visual aspect of it, at the very least, you know, the monologues, I think, is definitely something they could have played around with. Something that they should do in like a future Death Note adaptation, which, by the way, they are making a sequel to the Death Note Netflix live action adaptation. So this is an idea maybe they could try to incorporate into that. I've already made videos of how I would have fixed the Death Note movie and how I would have made a Death Note movie, so definitely feel free to check those videos out. But yeah, there's just another little thing I thought, you know, this is kind of interesting, and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to make a video about it, and, you know, kind of wanted to give a little bit of extra things that I would add to if I were to be in charge of producing a live action Death Note or trying to actually make a good Death Note adaptation, good Death Note movie. So yeah, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. That helps me out a ton. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, as always, I will see you guys in the next video.